Item 9, I will withdraw that. Councilor Caldwell.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam President. I have items 10 through 18, but I am withdrawing 14. Thank you.
Okay, and the other items are ready?
Yeah, they're all ready. Right, Julie? Yes. Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Madam President.
Councilor Green.
Okay, 23 and 24 will be held. Okay. All right, so item 19, this is the increase in compensation to the Board of Assessment. Any questions on this item? Item 20, Commissioner. So I had a couple questions on this one. Can you walk us through a little bit more of the context as to this building, why now, and what's going on?
So yeah, we are always engaged in internal discussions about the future of different components.
Can you move the mic?
Oh, there is no mic.
It's going to go better from this point forward, I think. Yeah, well, you know, this is, I think, laying the groundwork for a more informed discussion of this component of the asset portfolio, that being the garages. We're not committed to the idea that we need to be in the parking business, not at least as fully as we have been for a generation. We get some expressions of interest, I would say, about certain garages, this being one of them. We want to get a good sense of the market value, reconcile that with what we understand to be the value based on the numbers that have been coming in over the past few years. Get some reflection of what the market thinks about the value of parking structures post-COVID, because obviously that's an asset class that's taken a terrible hit in the last 26 months. But we'd like to talk knowledgeably about numbers before we can, I think, communicate internally about what the future might be of this property and related properties around town.
Do other councilors have questions on this item?
I kind of sort of do. I want to ask, okay, so we're talking about parking garages. I agree with you. We've been talking for the last 10 years about them in the parking lots. So if we're looking at reducing some of our assets, with all of the downtown living areas, would there be a way that maybe we could take them from open parking to attaching them to those buildings and letting the owners, you know, have somewhere for their renters to park?
I think to the extent that there's interest, that's something we're open to. We don't really want to do this on a case-by-case basis. We want to do this a little more holistically, which is, again, why we want to get informed about the market. But I think there's an argument to be made that in some sectors of downtown, these have done the job. They are economic development tools. That time has come and gone. The private sector can take over, and given the boom in the last generation of residential density downtown, I think...
Because it would end up being like a side lot to a house.
Exactly.
If it's right next to that apartment building.
It's no longer an amenity that complements economic development. It's an amenity that complements that specific residential development with need on site. I think that's exactly right. But I think we're a little hesitant to jump into that based on anecdotal evidence. We want to see the numbers before we can say that that's something we want to pursue actively, at least.
And you have those tools, though?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, other questions on this? Okay,
Thanks all.
thank you. Item 21 and 22, any questions on these items? Okay, item 23 and 24 will be held. Item 25 and 26, any questions on that item? Okay, item 27, Kelsey, you had sent us an email on this. Do you want to walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So I also have First Deputy Commissioner of Finance, Mike Mazzaro, and Director of HR, Rick Alcivar. So we are essentially, again, requesting an appropriation of $620,000 for the first phase of a multi-phased project. So Friday, we sent a breakdown of the phases of the project. Phases 1 and 2 are the scoping of the implementation. Phases 1 and 2 they're the scoping, they go together, but we're seeking two different funding sources. So this $620,000 is the rest of the allocated money that was budgeted towards cybersecurity. We actually had a very lengthy list of projects that we wanted to tap in for this specific pool of money, but we felt that this project was one of the most critical, and therefore of phases 1 and 2, which actually is going to, again, be more than $620,000, we wanted to take the remaining money and put it towards that piece of the project. So how are we going to pay for the rest of it? Couple different options. We are going to talk to internally to research to look at different grant opportunities. We also have the ability to look at a different section of ARPA and identify whether or not there's something that resonates to complete the rest of that scope. And if not, we're very confident that we can actually accomplish that through a different bucket of ARPA. But if not, we would look to for operating costs.
So and maybe I'm missing, I'm not sure I understand the specific work that we're going to be doing for that money.
Yep. So we have, and again, I can have First Deputy Commissioner of Finance, Mike Canizaro, speak to the actual finance piece of it. So with this money, it's specifically scoping out the entire ERP transformation. So we're looking at every single finance process, every single HR process, and we're identifying, what does it look like right now, and where are there areas of non-compliance and areas of risk. So with that, there's two things that are going to come out of that. Number one, what can we do to the systems that we have right now for increased compliance for financial processes? How can we transform the processes so that when we do move towards our new system, that they will be better? And number three, what is the roadmap going to look like? What should we implement when? What's the low-hanging fruit, so to speak? What can we implement with what we have and essentially create, streamline the processes and, not have any of that, those slips in risk and controls procedures. But Mike, did you want to?
And before he answers, can I ask the question, because you're saying it's phase 1 and 2?
Yep.
So do we have the total, I know you have a total estimate of what the whole project is going to cost. You have the total estimate?
Yep, for phase 1 and 2, it's closer to $800,000.
So, but that's to develop a scope. It's not to physically change any of the systems, right? Like that would come later. That'd be a separate cost to change over the systems.
Yep, so for converting to a new system, that would be a separate cost. What will come is recommendations to for changes that we can make right now with the systems that we do have to make better the process, to have it more streamlined, and prepare us for that conversion to a new ERP system.
I mean, I'm just not in the industry, but it just feels like a lot to develop a scope for that much money. But
so it's a scope for all of our finance, and it's a scope for what we're going to do when we convert to the new systems. But it's also what we can do right now. It's basically the discovery phase of an implementation. So any implementation, that scoping phase, also known as discovery sometimes, is going to be absolutely the most critical piece of the implementation, because what we're doing is we're planning for what that's going to look like instead of jumping right to a solution. Oftentimes when we jump right to a solution, you spend more money because a vendor actually comes in and they're doing this while we're implementing the solution. So there's room for discrepancy, there's room for error, there's room for, we do the process this way, we do the process that way, and then, there's no tiebreaker of how we're going to actually implement the system. So really, we're doing all of the upfront work so that when we get into the actual implementation, it will take less time instead of extending a couple years. Ultimately, we're trying to make a more strategic investment in technology longer term, and this is a significant one. ERP systems are a lot of time, a lot of money, and the more time we spend planning, ultimately we're going to end up saving money by reducing the opportunity and reducing the risk for a vendor asking for extensions because they don't understand the process, they don't understand the requirements. We're doing that, we're providing it to a vendor, and ultimately it's it's covering ourselves and reducing the risk for the implementation.
So the 600,020 comes after one, your stages 1 and 2?
It is 4 stages, 1 and 2.
Stage
Yep.
1. Oh, I see, okay.
So do you have like, I hear what you're saying, and you're saying there's 800,000 total that you're gonna need.
Short.
Where are you gonna get the other money?
Yep. So for the gap, there's a couple different options. One, as I mentioned, we have other pools of ARPA money that have been budgeted that completely resonate with that piece of scope. So we're fairly confident that we can tap into that budgeted money within ARPA specifically. We are looking at grants as well. In the past, there's been grant opportunities from the state to, for these specific types of projects. So we're looking into that as an additional funding source. And third, we are fairly confident that we can get that from the operating budget. And ultimately, anything beyond phases 1 and 2 is for the implementation piece of it is capital budget.
But that was the thing. What's the next phases? What is the estimated amount for those?
So that is something that it will be based on phases 1 and 2. We can't be confident on what that budget is going to be without understanding what our scope is and understanding what it is that we need to implement, how we need to implement, and in what order we need to implement, because that could range. It'll be millions, but it will range, and we want to make sure that that investment is properly planned. We know exactly what it's going to cost when. How is it going to be implemented? What's the resourcing plan? What's the operational readiness, so to speak? Because it is such a significant investment, we need to spend the upfront time planning, making sure that we have the scope. We understand what it is that we're getting into, because that's not something that we're entering into lightly.
How antiquated is the system?
Very. Which one? And very. We have the AS400, which is 45 plus years old, very non-compliant, huge cybersecurity risk. We have PeopleSoft, which is end of life. We have.
Wait, how is PeopleSoft end of life? We just dumped a
Yeah.
whole bunch of money into PeopleSoft.
So PeopleSoft on-prem is end of life, which means that, the company has given, whenever a company says something's end of life, they either give a specific number of years, how long you have to retire it, or they just say, it's end of life, you have to start planning for a conversion. So, there's 2 different ways that we could go about this. We could, and again, this is kind of one of the goals of this assessment, is to understand which way we should go and which way is the most financially, reasonable. So we could either modernize to a complete cloud solution, which will cost money, and it's a migration from on-prem to cloud. And with that, there's small changes that we would have to make within the process. There's small changes that we would have to make in, how we manage it. But that's one option. Another option is converting to a modern version of the same kind of software, maybe same company within the software, but a different version. Again, that would be a little bit of a bigger change. It would allow us to enable a variety. There's a huge backlog of financial processes that we would like to digitize. We have no modern way of managing any of the HR processes or any of the human capital management processes that we have, which is why Rick is very, very invested in no longer using the AS400. So because it is such a big project, because it will ultimately lead to something that we need to do and we need to do right, that's why we feel so strongly about doing this upfront work and this upfront discovery, because ultimately, if we skip to a solution, we're going to spend way more money in the long run implementing it.
What's the time frame you see happening here?
For the entire project? Okay, so also something that, it's years. It's definitely multi-million-dollar, multi-year project for the entire portfolio. For this first and second phases, within the next 6 to 8 months is when we'll have a time frame and an understanding of, what happens after that. But sometime within the next year, so probably around this time next fiscal year, is when we'll have depending on the operational readiness assessment and where it says, how we should go about this, that's when we'll have an understanding of and be able to start implementing what they recommend we go with first. Now, it might be that there's a module that we already have that we can implement very quickly, and we should do so. Maybe their recommendation is that we spend less money by converting to a new system. Maybe there's less risk in that way. But ultimately, within a year from now, we should have a roadmap within the next 3 to 5 years of how we implement what in what order. Because that's going to, within this first phase assessment, risk is going to be assessed, the technology stack is going to be assessed, and then of course within the process realm, what can we fix now within our processes? Well, if there's things that we fix now within our current system, maybe we can wait 3 years to implement the new version of that, or it'll really heavily depend on this assessment.
That eliminates the option of using ARPA funds for any of this after the fact.
For our whole conversion, yes.
So how confident are you in 3 to 5 years that things won't change again? Because we know you can do the study, right? Get this information, we pay all this money, and we know it's a timeline. In 3 to 5 years, especially with technology, anything. So
Yep.
how confident are you that we're gonna be okay in 5 years, what they
Yep.
decided that will work for us in 5 years?
Absolutely. So very confident that if we start this entire project within the next year to 2 years, that we can create a foundation that within the next 3 to 5 years can't be undone, and also will ultimately lead to a few different things. So if we're converting to cloud software, cloud is much more secure, and it's much more, we have the ability to be up to date much faster. So with on-prem software, what we have currently, it's very manual in terms of the patches that you have to do. We have to rely heavily on a special skill set that ultimately constantly has to be monitoring the software. With cloud software, that ultimately falls on the responsibility of the company. So, for example, with 365, we're just, fully converting to 365. We're going to have more secure versions of all of the apps that we use every single month. So it's a similar thing when we convert to cloud technology for something like ERP. It's way faster in terms of patching any known security defects. It's way more secure, and instead of having an in-house kind of specialized skill set around that, it's a global skill set that we're tapping into to make sure that we have the most secure environment for our financial software, which is that, and HR, which is PII data, very sensitive.
And I know Councilor Green wants to move to his next item, but one quick question.
Sure.
So once this is all converted, that means, to me, that time cards will all be done through electronically, right?
Time
No more
cards.
paper.
So time cards are actually not part of this. Time cards, the Kronos implementation within the next, so the time card implementation should fully be, it's a separate piece of this. It'll be integrated with this. Within the next 4 to 5 months, we should be seeking full rollout, of which the police department is already live. The fire department should be live within the next month, and the rest of the city should be live by the end of this year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kelsey. Items 29 through 33 are ready unless there's any questions.
And I ask no questions.
Item 34, 35, and 36 will be discussed in executive session immediately following this meeting. Items 37, 38, and 39 are ready unless there's any questions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Paniagua.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam President. I have items 40 and 41. This is contract Excelus for medical and dental third-party administrative services, and the agreement with BPAS. It's to amend it, actuarial and pension services. If no questions, they're ready. Okay, moving on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Hogan.
Thank you, President Hudson. I have items 42 through 47. 42 was a special permit. The former 5th District Councilor said it was okay to go ahead. So unless there's any questions, we'll I'll say it's ready. 43 and 44 are ones about the local waterfront. We're applying for a grant, the Inner Harbor, and 44, of course, is for the MWBE Certified Construction Service Construction Consultant Businesses for a period of 1 year. So, are there any questions? Hearing none, okay. 45 and 46 are approval for a planned institutional district that has to do with the Syracuse University slight expansion on 710, 722 University Avenue. And 47, is there any questions on that? 45 and 46? I don't see Heather here either, so. And 40,
She's in the back.
Heather, you're always in the back. There's no questions for you. That's okay. There's no questions for you, Heather. 47 is a thing I held, and we're going to have a meeting on July 27th, at 10 o'clock. That's our study session to further clarify exactly what the administration has talked about with this proposed developer. So, and that's all I got.
Counselor, I just want to point out that the match is made in this, in 44, before they didn't have the match. I don't know, did you see that?
Okay, local match to 20%. 44?
Yeah.
Okay, they're already there, President Hudson.
Thank you.
Except for I'm holding 47.
Councilor Majuk.
Thank you, Madam President. Sorry. I have item 48 to 64. Item 48 and 49 are part of, or at least related, and they will both be held.
Introduced.
48 should be introduced and tabled.
48 is going to be introduced.
Okay. Yes, we will table it for the next voting session, and 49 will be held. And we are working to schedule a committee meeting for that on the 18th or the 19th. We are still settling the details of that. And then item 50 through 64 are all ready, unless if any of my colleagues have questions. Nope, that will be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor, what's your name? Hogan for Councilor Allen.
I got my name. President Hudson. This has been a tough common council. End of life. This woman's talking about end of life, and you're forgetting my name. This could be a bad thing. I have items 65 for Councilor Allen, Center Court renovation or innovation for community ambassador program. Who's handling that today? Is that you, someone? Come on. I think we talked about this at the last study session. Everybody okay with this? Yes. Okay. 66, we have appropriate funds from American Rescue Plan for LLC for professional services related to completion of the housing market study. And I think we're all in agreement that this is needed, especially in lieu of what's planned for the Syracuse Developmental Center. 67 is appropriate funds from the American Rescue Plan for $500,000 in agreement with various community centers. And we had a committee meeting on this, I believe. And then 68 through 86 are all land bank items. So you want any questions on any particular item here?
I think I remember 69 being withdrawn.
Yeah, she
right?
withdrew.
She withdrew
and
69.
held 76.
City Clerk, you got a note here because I don't have a notes on this.
And she yeah.
Correct, and
So which ones are withdrawn? 69?
9 is withdrawn, 76 is held,
Okay.
77 and 78 is held, 79 is withdrawn, and that to be verified,
And 80 is held.
80 is held. 80 is held.
So, are there any questions remaining on any of these other land bank, transfers to the land bank? Hearing none, I'll say.
Oh, wait.
Didn't have 80 held, I'm just saying.
Well, I did in my book, but I'm gonna, I had asked her to hold one and I can move it.
I believe it was 80, 106 Onondaga Ave.
Yep, you can move that one.
Okay. Done.
Thank you.
President Hudson.
Thank you, Councilor Hogan. Okay. Counselor Gathers.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I have items 87 through 103. I think they're all ready now, unless any councilors have any further
Nope,
questions or
nope.
discussions.
Oh, yeah, they are. All righty.
And I have, I'm sorry, President
Go
Hudson.
ahead.
After, I have a waiver item at 104, and that's, Eric's going to handle this and explain what we're going through.
All righty, you're on again, Counselor Hogan.
All right, good afternoon, councilors. So thanks to Councilor Hogan for your help adding this as a waiver item, but similar to some of the other grant requests that you have on this agenda, the city, through SEDCO, the Syracuse Economic Development Corporation, will be submitting a Main Street application, which is through the state's consolidated funding application. We've targeted a location that we actually talked about last summer and last year as well, the 4,500 to the 4,700 blocks of South Salina Street, taking you down towards about East and West Seneca Turnpike. There's numerous commercial mixed-use buildings here that we see opportunity for. We've had discussions with several of the property owners and business owners in this area. So SEDCO would be submitting an application and ultimately would find out later this year if we're successful for facade enhancements, build out of commercial spaces and the like. The city has been successful with the Main Street program in the past, so we're looking to throw our hat in the ring for this current round.
Any questions, Eric?
I have been waiting for this, so this is good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Major.
Approval from Councilor Middle.
Okay, I was going to mention this is located within the 3rd district, so.
You get a lot of stuff, I'll tell you, in the 3rd district does.
This is good.
So, really quick, I listened to that and I just pulled up the building. Are you talking about that whole?
Yeah, so it would be multiple structures. So this would be about 3 blocks or so. That's usually what a typical Main Street application. They're only would like you to go so large. But we've been talking. There's numerous projects being proposed there, and numerous building owners that are looking to invest.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
All righty, and with that, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So move.
All in favor? Aye. All righty, here we go. Come on. Did you check on that property for me?